All right, in this set of notes, we are going to start looking at slope and how we can write it when given 2 points or given an equation. So we may see two different terms used for slope. Slope is also called rate of change. Okay, so anytime you see the words rate of change, they are talking about slope and vice versa. So the slope formula is when we have 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2. And what we do is we are finding our rise over our run, which is the change in our y's divided by the change in our x's. And so when we find slope, we have 4 different types of slope that we can have. If our slope is a positive number, that means our line is increasing. It is going up and to the right. If we have a negative number, that means our slope is decreasing. It is going down and to the right. If our slope is equal to 0, that's going to be a horizontal line because it has no rise. And if our slope is undefined, it is a vertical line because it has a 0 for the run. All right, so for example, when it says determine the slope of the line that passes through the points 4, 1, and negative 6, 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my points, x1, y1, x2, y2. So that just means my first x, my first y, my second x, and my second y. And then my slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to fill in what I know about those 4 things. So the minus signs are going to stay there, but I'm going to replace my variables. All right, so for the top it says y2 minus y1. So that's going to be 5 minus 1. Bottom is x2 minus x1. So that's negative 6 minus 4. All right, now I can type this whole thing in the calculator by making a fraction. So remember, you can press alpha and then the button next to it and make a fraction and then type in that whole thing. Okay, and when you press enter, it will simplify the fraction for you. And what we get is negative 2/5. Okay, so that is my slope. This is going to be a downhill line if I had the slope between these 2 dots. All right, and if you're doing that by hand, on top 5 minus 1 was 4, on the bottom negative 6 minus 4 was negative 10, and then we could simplify both of those. Okay, so if we look at this by hand instead of typing it in, we get 4 over negative 10. Both of those can be divided by 2, and that's what gives me my negative 2/5. I just moved my negative sign from the bottom either out to the front or up at the top number. All right, example 2, we're doing the same thing. We've got 2 new points. I always start by labeling. That way I don't mix stuff up. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to write out my slope formula. We always start by writing the formula so that we know everything's going where it's supposed to be. So plugging in for my 4 values, y2 minus y1 is going to be negative 1 minus 2. x2 minus x1 is 6 minus 6. Okay, so if I go to my calculator and I type this one in, I'm going to get an error, and it's going to say divide by 0. And that is because for my top, negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3, but in the bottom, 6 minus 6 is 0. Okay, we cannot divide by 0. So 0 cannot be in the denominator. That's why we're getting the error message in our calculator. All right, it says error divide by 0. So when this happens, that means our slope is undefined. This would be a vertical line. And that's because our x values are the same number. They're stacked up, one on top of the other. All right, so going back to our 3 types of equations, remember m is your slope, okay? That's why we said m equals on all the ones before. So in slope-intercept form and point-slope form, we can see what the slope is just by looking in front of our x, okay? That's why they're called slope-intercept and point-slope, because they tell you what your slope are in the equation. Now, with standard form, you can't see the slope. So what you have to do is you actually have to solve it out for y. So you got to get y by itself and then look in front of your x, or you can remember the shortcut, which was the opposite of whatever a is divided by whatever b is. Okay? So that's how you find your slope on standard form. So on this last example, we're going to look at the rate of change, which just means slope of each given equation. So for my first equation, this is slope-intercept form. So that is y equals mx plus b. So remember, m is your slope, so we're looking in front of that x, which was -3. So my slope is -3. My next equation is in point slope. So that is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So for my slope, my m is in front of the parentheses, which is also in front of x. So my m is equal to -1/2. All right, and then my last one is standard form. That's ax plus by equals c. So it is telling me that a equals 3 and b equals -4. So if my slope is -a over b, I have -3 over -4, which is +3/4, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive.